Chapter 94. The thin line between heroes and villains. So, you want to be a hero? Ask me something. I'll teach you how to be a real hero that none of those movies or comic books or whatever your generation likes to stuff their faces into can tell you. Oh, shut up. You're no hero. Not anymore. You're a fucking villain. You're not really the bad guy here. Can't you see that? Hearing how the man kept calling himself a real hero was beginning to fill Michael up with disgust. Oh, that's priceless. You think you're a hero, barked out Michael, both insultingly and filled with distress. Mr. Dorian felt that insult as he stuck his lips out and foam began to spew from the side. You got medals, son. You've got 2 silver stars, 4 brown stars, 4 purple hearts, a distinguished service cross, and a medal of honor. Michael picked up his hand again, but Mr. Dorian smacked it away as he stuck his fat mug straight into Michael's. Do you even know the hardships that comes with getting those? Since I'm guessing they'd look like shiny trinkets to wear, like some damn rock star would wear on stage to excite the gals that doesn't even know the meaning of what they represent. No, I got nothing, replied Michael. Mr. Dorian then lifted his head away and nodded in acceptance and said, just as I thought. Then Mr. Dorian grabbed the feather that Michael had tucked away behind his ear, looked at it, and began wheezing like crazy. Wait, are you kidding me? Is this a bald eagle feather? You really must have thought of yourself as being something grand to be tucking this behind your ear. Nice trinket you got here, rock star. I wonder if you even knew what type of feather it was. Joked Mr. Dorian as he crumpled it up in his hand and threw it away. Michael now felt crushed. Also, he felt like he was going to pass out any second. Looking around, he saw just how much blood he had lost and realized he was now dying. Fuck this shit, I don't want to be here. I wish I was with... But then something occurred to Michael. It's strange. All night long I felt like I've been on autopilot and this is what it's all come down to. I have to be here. As much as I don't want to be relating to this man, the crazy shit he's dishing, I still can. I know what he's talking about. I know where he's coming from. I mean, how much sense can you make out of a madman? Yet, I feel like I can, at some level. Maybe it was predestined for me to come here. Maybe because I'm the only one that could do this. Maybe. I place my real time in, son. Trust me. I'm what it takes. Forget movies or whatever you grew up on. That's all bullshit. They feed you because the cowards that make them are just ignorant when it comes to knowing what it really takes. They have you staring at a wall, presenting you with play of shadow puppets. But you need to step outside your front door and acknowledge the real world to know. Look at John Wayne. Did he have medals? Does Clint Eastwood, Mr. Dirty Harry? No, they're a bunch of stupid actors pretending to be something they're not. And society loves them for it instead of loving the real heroes in the world. I mean... And then the big white head paused as some extreme hate began to churn within him. Michael, sensing this, took heed as Mr. Dorian finally did stare directly into Michael's eyes. Like he really did want to convince him of something. I mean, I find it so fucking disrespectful and so fucking insulting how society gives those phonies, those actors, high praise and awards, while real heroes in the world that did their time and fought real hard are left in the dust and forgotten. Forget the real hero lost his legs and is now stuck in a wheelchair all his life, waiting in line for food stamps. No, fuck him. Let's praise and give millions of dollars to the phony cocksucking actor that pretends to be him in some movie. That's just people for you. Giving all the attention to those that deserve it the least and ignoring all those that not only need it, but earned it the most. Society makes me sick, makes me glad I'm murdering millions of them with that bomb in the upcoming war. Makes me wish I had taken that nuke to LA and started the revolution on the graves of all those Hollywood cocksucking. I hate them. I fucking... Oh, I should have. I really should have done that instead. Even though Michael found this man to be a despicable piece of shit, not worth listening to, he couldn't help but to see some truth to what he just said there, while thinking of his father. Yeah, but this guy has gone too far. Too much fucking hating there. And that definitely isn't right either. Not one bit. And fucking forgiving John Wayne shit. Why did he have to bring him up? It's like he knows what to say to tick me off. Mr. Dorian began nodding incessantly in agreement with his only true failure and then frowned in dismay. Say what you want to say about Nazi Germany. At least to them it was all about praising their real heroes. Here in America now it's choosing to believe in fiction over reality. Just a sign of the times. The sign of the times, I guess. More in the line with your children's generation, how they have no understanding of difference between the two. At least in my time, this country used to honor its soldiers more for all the sacrifices they made. And in Hollywood movies too. But now, with your pathetic Lily generation, they like to call them all baby killers and spit on them. Or make them into Frankenstein monsters like that Rambo movie. Since they did something the Lily sort wouldn't have the balls to do. In today's world, no one wants to celebrate the valiance coming from true heroes. They want to celebrate more the stuff coming from fictitious characters, shadows on a cave wall, fantasy-like characters, like a man turned into a machine, turned into a police officer, rogue archaeologists using the power of God through biblical artifacts to fight Nazis. Then there's that one behemoth crowd that you see a lot of in a lot of movies today, playing the role of a time-traveling robot, a commando, a barbarian, with that horrible accent of his, and seeing how he's built. He's a work of fantasy that shouldn't exist, period. And then there's whatever the hell that Star Wars thing was, with that Buck Rogers in the 50 billion and a half century crud, and with fire swords, a man wearing a 1950 black Buick on his head, and then a giant space yeti with a crossbow. What the hell is today's world coming to? All celebrating a bunch of crazy shit you'd expect from a Salvador Dali painting. People today must be fucking nuts, placing all their attention onto gobbledygook nonsense, a bunch of phony nonsense, but placing none on those that are the real McCoys. And don't even get me started on that Superman character that they're now making movies for. I hate the idea of everything that character represents, and I have since the beginning. Since no one wants to believe that Jesus religious stuff no more, and righteously so, but they still want to believe in godlike forces intervening to save their asses when real disasters happen. They created that character to supposedly represent everything someone like me and real heroes like me can never represent. Since we can't fly, speed faster than a locomotive, and have the power to run around outside in fruity looking colorful underwear without feeling ashamed of ourselves, which I tell you is a real superpower. Mr. Dorian then stopped to take a breath. And the colorful bastard is supposed to stand for truth, justice, and the American way. And the fuck is a faggot space alien or something. Fuck all that superhero garbage. At least John Wayne represented people that were supposed to be real figures in America. Michael then yawned, really letting one out. And Mr. Dorian saw that, and seeing how Michael was growing bored with him, really had him growing infuriated. You like comic books, son? You like Superman? Or Batman? You like cockamamie idiots being drawn up with their underwear worn over their tights pretending to be a bat or a popsicle or a spider? You think they're heroes? Fuck them. They're doodles on a piece of paper. They don't even exist. Figments of a child's imagination. Shadows on the wall. All that garbage doesn't exist. They don't exist. But you know what does exist? I exist. I'm the closest thing to a real hero you'll ever meet. And I got the medals to prove it. Now I know this guy is truly insane. The motherfucker's now jealous of Superman and shit. Did you used to play with G.I. Joe toys as a kid? Or are you watching those stupid G.I. Joe cartoons for those brainless kids today? Well, guess what? Guess who's a real deal G.I. Joe? Michael began to shake his head in despair as Mr. Dorian grew even more furious, taking it as a sign of rejection. You don't disrespect me like that, son. Men would honor no one they're seeing a bigger and better man with honor. That just shows you're really just a stupid punk with no idea of how the real world works. Please shut up. I don't want to hear it anymore, spat out Michael. Mr. Dorian just about lost as he continued to take Michael's words as rejection and said, well, too bad. If you want to be a hero that bad, it's too late to chicken out now, and I guess I should honor you with what it takes to be one. Michael felt like getting up and running away, but he still felt too weak from his gut wound. I'm going to put you through my own personal boot camp to see if you got what it takes. As he said that, Mr. Dorian broke out, lunging his boot into Michael's face, kicking him to the ground again. Too bad I can't show you the real horrors of what real heroes see, what I've seen. Too bad I can't detonate that bomb and make you watch millions dissolve away into flames and ash in front of you, have you watch millions die in front of you as I had to when I was tested. But I'll improvise. Mr. Dorian then lifted up his leg and kicked Michael straight in the gut where he was shot. Michael bellowed out in pain as the feeling all came rushing back. Is it breaking you yet? You feel broken yet? Michael said nothing, continued to shiver. Guess not. Well, too bad. I guess I have to continue. Mr. Dorian then began kicking with all his might into Michael's gut as Michael continued screaming. Mr. Dorian then went over to the security office and pulled out an assault rifle he had stashed away there. As he walked over to Michael, he jammed the tip hard into his wound, began trying to crowbar his guts around. Michael screamed in agony again as Mr. Dorian shook his head and said, fucking coward, you know you scream like a little girl. And with those lines, Madboy came out. This time, Madboy wasn't bellowing out in pain. This time, he was bellowing out in anger. Madboy began lashing out like a wild animal as he began to see blood, Mr. Dorian's blood. It looked like he was having an epilepsy on the floors as 1,000 emotions came flying out through 1,000 miles per second. Madboy almost felt like he was relishing the moment as he felt born in a world of rage and pain. Madboy felt his soul lunge out with the power of 1,000 rockets taking off all at once. Hateful passion filled up within him, burning hotter than the burning passion of 1,000 suns. 1,000 emotions, 1,000 cries, 1,000 murderous acts for justice, and 1,000 knives. Murder, murder, murder. And then he saw his mitts ringing Nikki's bony chicken neck again and fell back and petrified in place. Coward, I see, fucking coward, murmured out Mr. Dorian as he felt like he was done with Michael. Mr. Dorian lifted up the rifle and it looked like he was about ready to shoot this loser in the face. If I had a branding iron, I'd brand you right now, said Mr. Dorian. Michael then edged his head forward and said, just do it. I'm done. Fucking coward, murmured out Mr. Dorian as he took aim. Michael just couldn't believe how far this man was willing to go in his pursuit to weed out the strong amongst the weak. Even with Michael's father, when he would beat the ever-loving crap out of him, the man was really conflicted between the love of his son and not wanting to see him grow up, unable to defend himself. If that was Michael's father, what conflict did this man have? Did Mr. Dorian also have some form of compassion or love? Or did he have nothing but hatred in his heart? Stop calling me a coward. I'm not a coward, spat out Michael. Bullshit. If you're not willing to go on, it's because you're a coward, and that's all there is to it. Does this man have limits? Can you at least show pity? This enraged Mr. Dorian as he heard him use that word. Then he began to laugh in disbelief. You want me to take pity on you? Wow. I gotta say I'm surprised now. I never thought you could be that much of a sniveling, cowardly piece of... Fuck you! Shoot me if you want, I don't give a shit, explained Michael. Then why do you want me to take mercy? And I'm not referring to myself, you asshole. I'm talking about when you finally decide to pull the trigger on that detonator. You're not even going to have any pity for the millions you murder. No pity whatsoever. You know, in all my time, there's only been one true virtue I've noticed in people, and that's their ability to feel pity for one another. No matter how flawed people may be, how despicable and how undeserving. No matter how much people might despise each other, no matter how much one might have fallen from grace, pity is the one last means people show they can still connect. For we're all flawed in the end. If you can't accept people when they're at their lowest, you're never going to connect with anyone when they're at their greatest. You won't accept them, and worse yet, you'll never accept yourself and the flaws you carry. You need pity. You need it to get by in life. Without it, you'll just spend the rest of your days being tormented by your idea of perfection and how you and no one around you will ever amount to it. So, in other words, as much as you might hate everyone around you, you're telling me you still have no pity for the hell you're sending everyone to with what that fucking piece of shit down there? Hearing Michael's words, Mr. Dorian began to frown again from shoulder to shoulder, as he slowly turned away for a second, then turned back around and said, "No, I lost that a long time ago," and began to take aim again. No compassion, no pity. What the fuck is this man made of? He just hates the weak. He sees a coward, he hates it. I fucking hate pompous assholes, but really I hate them because... And then Michael realized what Mr. Dorian's real deal was. What drove the man and what drove him mad. He also understood what Mr. Dorian was trying to do now. He wasn't trying to introduce his insane sense of honor into him. He wanted to introduce him to fear. His fear. And now Michael realized that Mr. Dorian wasn't a product of might, as he's making himself out to be, but of fear. Fear was what drove him, and it was all he understood. Hell, he's been bringing that up every 2 seconds. How did I not see this before? It must have been something that took him a long time to live with, but even still, he was a slave to it. The man hated cowards because that's what he saw himself as. Coming to this conclusion, Michael couldn't help but to chuckle a bit. And when Mr. Dorian saw this, it made him hesitate, shooting Michael in the face. "What the hell are you laughing at?" demanded Mr. Dorian in a sullen tone. Michael picked up his head and stared directly into Mr. Dorian's eyes and told him what he thought of him. "I'm laughing because you hate cowards, because you are a fucking coward." As Mr. Dorian heard that, his jaw dropped and then tensed up in humiliation. He stood there for a bit and seemed to be reflecting back into himself. Then Mr. Dorian kicked Michael one last time and sat on his chest. "What did you say to me? What did you fucking call me?" demanded Mr. Dorian. Michael thought about what must have happened to set this man off from the start. For over 30 years, Mr. Dorian said he worked for the government. And one day he decided to turn on them. Before, he used to be a 1999 regular, Nicky said, heading up there with those baby boom Armani suits and even actors that he supposedly hates so much to party with them, Nicky told me. For over 30 years, he must have done some dirty deeds while living in his own white chateau in Venezuela, getting served by topless Latin women, until that is, when he found out that the U.S. wanted him out of the picture for robbing them. Can't hide from the government no matter where you go, huh? That must have scared him out of his cozy little world he had created. And that must have started everything. Don't do it. Don't murder millions just because you're afraid of the government, just because you feel like they turned on you and abandoned you. That made Mr. Dorian go back to rereading his own words as he came back all tensed up again. "I'm starting a revolution." "Oh, stop saying that. You keep spinning that shit in your head like a merry-go-round. It's all bullshit." And saying that really did something to the big white head. Mr. Dorian's jaw then began to jitter as he started chattering his teeth, but then he stiffened up his jaw to stop it. He glared at Michael and began nodding for some esoteric reason. Mr. Dorian looked down at his mitts and then placed them on opposite sides of Michael's head. "Last time I did this, I was about your age. Let's see if I still got it." And as Mr. Dorian began squeezing Michael's head in, Michael tried with all his might to throw his arms up and to fight back, but Michael had lost way too much blood and he felt barely alive now to do anything, let alone powerful enough to fight off Mr. Dorian. As Mr. Dorian started ramming in the force, squeezing with all his might, Michael began screaming out as he felt his jaw lock up and spasm. "Stop it!" cried out Michael. "Now you're feeling it, aren't you? Tell me how it feels," asked Mr. Dorian, mirroring the same expression of anguish that was on Michael's face. Looking into Mr. Dorian's eyes, the man seemed to be in a conflict within himself, as if drenched in a memory of something he had lost in the past. "Just stop it. I don't want it anymore. Stop it, cried out Michael. It doesn't stop. It never stops. You can't stop it. It goes on and on and on and on. Then Mr. Dorian broke off and fell back, as he realized he couldn't do that to him. He liked Michael too much to, and did something he hadn't done in a long, long while and grew pity on him. And now his jaw was jittering again, and he seemed to be shivering in fear. After a second had passed, Mr. Dorian got up, sighed as he regained some composure again, then started walking over to the detonator and seemed ready to end it all. As Michael saw this, he lifted his hand up to call out to him. Don't do it, you asshole. Stop it. I am stopping it, murmured out Mr. Dorian, looking away. You're not doing it for your revolution. You made up all that crazy shit in your head, going through hoops and hurdles to concoct some form of noble reasoning you could stand by, have reason to do what you're about to do. In your mind, that's what you think, but in your heart, you're just full of fear and hatred and a sense of abandonment. And someone once told me, if your heart isn't in the right place, your mind definitely won't be. Mr. Dorian just shook his head, as he seemed like he wanted to stay focused with his agenda, and Michael knew he had to keep the pressure if he was to break the man's conviction. For over 30 years, you said? 30 years you worked with the government? And you've had that nuke since the 60s? Why now? Why now you're deciding to take them on? Why? Mustered up Michael, trying hard to get his words through in this dying hour. This is the best time. Bullshit! You're only doing it now because it's only recently they turned on you. They abandoned you, and you're scared of them. So now they're the enemies, and you had to make up a reason to do what you'd never do in a sane state of mind. Mustered up Michael again. Mr. Dorian broke up with distraught, as it seemed the truth was finally ringing home with him. Keep talking about how much he loves. How about this? If you're so passionate about your revolution, then why kill yourself now? Asked Michael. What do you mean? Demanded Mr. Dorian as he began chewing his bottom lip. Why do you want to die now? Don't you want to stay back and see how well your schemes work out, your beautiful revolution? Mr. Dorian began to shake his head again, trying hard to refuse what he was hearing. You said you're here to die. You're waiting for the Reaper. Why are you waiting for him? Because that's justice, broke out Mr. Dorian as he started catching him saying things he hadn't been able to understand until now. Michael's eyes now began to glow as he felt his theory of this man was now complete. That's the only justice for the shit I'm about to do, continued Mr. Dorian. You said it then, not I. You don't want to do this. You really don't want to do this. And you can't deny that now. Justice? Killing yourself out of justice? Sounds like you really can't stand what you're doing. You were talking about what it takes to be a hero. Well, let me ask you something. What does it take to be a villain then? Are they really that stupidly evil as they are in the movies? Or are they really just so twisted and demented and scared out of their minds? The assholes actually think they're doing good. Mr. Dorian froze and said nothing, but continued to eye the detonator. Is there justice in what you're doing? Murdering millions over some bullshit you made up because you can't face your true nature? Now that's what I call psychotic justice. But does it really have to be like that? Asked Michael. You said I'm doing this for revenge? You think I'm that much of a sick fuck that I... Suddenly, Mr. Dorian's mouth was no longer jittering. It was widely beginning to open and shut violently. But once it started, Mr. Dorian quickly grabbed a hold of it and locked it shut. I'm a hero. You think I'd do something that despicable and weak just because... Michael now decided not to respond anymore. He felt like he had made his point, and it seemed like the man was able to do the rest by himself. I'm saving them. I'm doing them a world of good. Wow, he really does think he's doing good. I can't believe it, thought Michael, but said nothing. This country wants to turn fascist. You might not see it, but I have. I'm not just transplanting my old fear of the Nazis into the U.S. today to hate them enough to... Wait, am I? Line after line, as his eyes tried to study the words in his head, Mr. Dorian found himself unable to understand their meaning anymore. They were no longer making sense to him. I told you what I had planned. It made sense, didn't I? Murmured out Mr. Dorian, staring away into the man in the mirror again. Michael now felt like he had to repeat it one more time, in hopes that it would finally sink in. You asking me that, or are you asking yourself? And that finally did it. It was done. The last line broke Mr. Dorian's conviction in half as his eyes blazed at Michael coming to terms with the truth. Now Mr. Dorian finally saw it, crystal clear and clear as day. He finally looked into himself and saw that he really was just out for blind revenge. There was no real intentions to start a revolution. All he wanted was revenge for the U.S. having turned on him. He felt how scared he was and understood how he was really doing this all for all the cowardly reasons. And that thought there made him sick to his stomach as he began to heave. Mr. Dorian then looked like he was going for the detonator as Michael called out to him again, "Don't do it! Let the madness, it never stops. The madness never stops. There is no stopping it. It's like a merry-go-round, like a carousel. The madness never stops. Round and round it goes. Where does it stop? Nobody knows. It never stops. It can't be stopped. It won't stop. It won't stop. It won't stop." Mr. Dorian was skipping like a broken record now as his face cringed up with horror every time he said it. He looked like a man in a world of fear and anguish, and such which no man should ever have to face. Michael almost felt pity for the old monster as he heard him skip over and over and over again, and as his mind looped one final time with those words, Mr. Dorian then grabbed the detonator and chucked it against the wall as it broke into several pieces. Staring down at what he had just done, Mr. Dorian felt beside himself as he realized it was over. He bellowed out once and then fell silent. Then Mr. Dorian closed his eyes and realized, strangely enough, that carousel that had been spinning in his head for 40 years had finally stopped. He eyed the detonator as if though he was confused as to what he was seeing. Then he walked over to the chair demurely and sat back down. He sighed and said and twitched and ranted no more. The insanity that was rampaging within him was now over, and he was back to his real old self, or really, whatever that remained. A demure 20-something man coming back home with his girl Jane and beginning to accept that, maybe, life didn't have to be all about waiting, just waiting for something different, to go to war, become a hero, and have his moment to shine. Michael couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe what he had just seen and what he had just done. Michael then slumped back and felt ready to just let it go.